welcome to the panel on regional networks of fact-checkers. My name is Cvjeticanin. I come from Bosnia, from organization Zaštone that is a part of several networks, and it's my great pleasure to have three of my fellow board members, advisory board IFCN members from 3 different continents, and the 4th person on this panel that is a member of my more immediate fact-checking family, and that is Ana from Faktograf from Croatia. And we have 4 people from 4 different continents doing great work in not just like fact-checking on their own organizations, but also connecting across border and across languages in some cases, and thus creating really invaluable new shared experiences for people who are dedicated to fact-checking. So we're gonna try to be as immersive as possible in bringing all of these different experiences and the lessons that they have learned, some of them networking in this way for years, some of them kind of pushed towards that during the pandemic because of the inability to kind of physically see each other and network in a different, more traditional settings that we have been used to. So without further ado, I would start with Laura Zommer from Chequeado, from Argentina, who is a founder of a really impressive and I think the oldest network that we have on this panel, and that is Chequeado, if I'm pronouncing this correctly. And Laura, welcome. And can you walk us through how did the network come to be? What did it accomplish in these, I would say, 7 years that it's been working? What would you say was the major success story of your network? Is Laura coming through? She froze. Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay. Can we then move to Noko? I'm sorry about the technical issues. Noko Makgato from Africa.
Thank you, and hello everyone.
Hi.
The panel and in participants. The more successful is that we know since the beginning that together we work to serve our communities, and then we start the network in
we're losing Laura.
I can see you, but
okay, this is, yeah, we're having a huge delay, I think, in your stream.
I see you perfect, but I suspect you can't see me. I don't know.
Okay.
Want me to answer or not?
You can continue. No, this is not coming through. We'll just move on, and maybe Laura, maybe you can try doing the switch to another device because this one is really freezing a lot. So let's move on and talk to Noko Makgato from Africa Check, and also a founding member, I think, of Africa Facts, another network that is really interesting in similar way as Chequeado, as Chequeado does in Latin America. It kind of encompasses an entire continent and a lot of different contexts in a lot of different countries. So yeah, this is delayed.
What I'm saying
Laura
is that we know since.
So Noko, could you walk us through the?
Thanks for that, Tijana. I hope you can hear me clearly. Awesome. So the network we have is called Africa Facts, and this we created in 2017. The idea behind it was to foster the practice of fact-checking across the continent. At the time, there were only 2 organizations that were doing regular fact-checking, and that was Africa Check and PESA Check. And there was a clear need to foster the emerging culture and sort of guide organizations that have an interest in fact-checking, and also assist media companies that are interested in getting into fact-checking and act as a sort of sort of holding hand and walk these organizations around the process and how to get into fact-checking. So we connect fact-checking organizations and initiatives, and we provide space to share best practice. We collaborate on various efforts to fight the spread of false information across Africa. So 4 years on, since 2017, we have more than 20 members from all corners of the continent, from Burkina Faso to Zimbabwe, and the vast majority of these, they do regular fact-checking. So we continue to grow, and we see a lot of interest in different parts of the continent. There's even a student fact-checking initiative in Nigeria called People's Check. And so this is showing that there's growing interest in fact-checking, not just amongst journalists, but also students. So members, quite frankly, we encourage them to become verified signatories of the IFCN, and we provide organizations with guidance on how to become signatories. Thanks, Tijana.
Can we try again? No, it's not coming through.
Yeah, of course we can. But I'm not sure if you can listen to me or not. I can listen to you perfect.
We hear you. Now we hear you.
I'm there or not?
Yes,
Yeah?
yes, you are.
Okay, then, yeah, perfect. Then what I'm trying to say is that we started with LATAM Chequea 7 years ago in 2014, when there were no one in the region doing fact-checking. What we decided to do, knowing that together we are strength and our community need us, being as quickly as we can and as efficient as we can, we start, as Noko said, in Africa Facts, to invite media and organizations that we imagine can be or have a unit of fact-checking in a team that perhaps is more focused on investigative journalists or in political journalists, and we help them to know more about our methodology, and as Noko said, we share our principles, and we create and try at the beginning to know each other and to create trust. And what we saw is that when we started, it was difficult to make some of that organization being part of the activities or proposals that we try to encourage them to do together. But the pandemic gave us an incredible opportunity to work together. Then what happened is that during last year and this year, 33 organizations from 20 countries are working together, producing incredible content, not just articles for our website, but also having the investigation ready. We have the chance to focus more on the specific formats and narratives that we need to reach the people that need us more. Then I want to be short and leave the rest also have the chance to speak, but we have specific focus for senior people in audios by WhatsApp. We have a work with young people, with influencers, and also we have a group of organizations working in indigenous languages to reach the people that is not necessarily reading or speaking, not Spanish, not Portuguese. Then that's a bit of what we are living today. That today is incredible, successful, but I should share with you that it wasn't necessarily so easy to have everyone in the same boat in the same moment. Then if someone is starting a network like this, my recommendation is you should be patient then best that you are going to do in the beginning gonna repay you a lot after a while.
Thank you, Laura. I think that's a great segue to go to Govindraj from Boom from India, because the languages and thinking about different languages is definitely something that is very important for India and for whole of South Asia. So Govindraj, could you present what's the situation like in there? And Boom, as is Africa Czech, also is something of a multilingual project to start with. So that's a very interesting perspective to have when we're talking about networking. We're not getting audio.
Before, Before Boom, we started factchecker.in in 2014. And actually, we were, I think, the first fact checker officially or unofficially to exist in Asia Pacific. So in some sense, we've had the advantage of being early and the disadvantage of being early, because this is something that obviously we have to create and try and build understanding and also convince people that this is an important thing to do. So today we are in 3 languages, in English, Hindi, and Bengali. Hindi and Bengali. Hindi is the largest language in India. Bengali is a prominent language from Eastern India. We're also present in Sri Lanka and Myanmar. So one of the things that we've been doing particularly in the last 6 months is working with fact checkers or organizations who want to become fact checkers in countries like Sri Lanka, and taking them through the process of becoming an IFCN certified fact checker, and also hand holding and sharing our knowledge and experiences. So for us, it's really about building networks. India, as you perhaps know, has maybe the largest number of fact checkers for any country in the world today. And but yet we are not really networked in that sense, because maybe it's still early stage and we all are addressing different sub segments of the larger market, which is India, which, as you know, is a very large country with more than 1.3 billion people. So the opportunity in some ways today, and the need, I would think, is to say, how can we as fact checkers come together to have greater impact? Can we, a lot of our work involves fighting back institutional misinformation or institutional disinformation, whether it's in the world of politics and society or in health and medicine. I think the network should also come together. One is to help each other and become better at what we do, but also to achieve greater impact in fighting the original problem, that is, like I said, of misinformation and organized disinformation. So to that extent, I think we still have to do some amount of thinking, because all of us are small. We are all mostly bootstrapped entrepreneurial organizations, but collectively and in partnership with platforms, we obviously can have a much greater impact in what we do. But it's equally important to bring together and direct that effort and energy to ensure that we have greater impact in going after those, particularly those who spread organized disinformation, including in areas like health and medicine, as we've seen in the last 1 year.
Thank you, Govindraj. And it's really interesting that Anna and I were actually talking about this when talking about this panel, that a lot of networks come from this where situation for fact checkers is not so great, where there's maybe freedom of the press is jeopardized, or general conditions could be hostile towards journalism and fact checking. And ours is a context that is maybe a little lighter, but it's not great either. So what does that look like in our corner of the world, and what our network, because this is something that is kind of our baby, and that's why I'm using the plural. How did CCheck come to be, and what would you say was the best thing that we've done so far in this kind of little time that it exists?
Is that question to me?
Hi.
To Anna, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. It's really nice to be here, even though I'm in my apartment. But yeah, thank you, Tijana. I think the probably the best thing that we did so far is that we actually really truly started to make this happen and become a reality in March or April 2020, when the situation was for everyone around the world completely crazy. And of course, in those are the kinds of situations where you once again realize it's it's really important to do things together, especially when you're facing an issue that's basically global. What we needed to do was find a way to work together in our small corner, but still a very famous corner. I'm sure almost everybody knows about the Balkans for good or bad reasons, but it's a place that we know we sort of need to respect by working together. And I think that's probably the maybe it sounds kind of, I don't know, lame, but for me it's really personally the most important thing. So I really found it encouraging that Laura said, when you're start slow, it's going to pay off in the future. So CCHEC is made out of 6 organizations from 5 countries in our region. What we've done in the last year and a half or so is we've worked together on sharing our knowledge and information about specific ways to combat disinformation or misinformation in our region. We did work on certain analyses together as well, but probably the most important thing would be that we are sharing knowledge that we have, and we are learning what are our sort of blind spots. So in the last couple of months, we've decided that we need to kind of take this to a different level. So just like very fresh news, about a month or so, we decided that the network is going to have a coordinator. That's going to be my colleague Jelena Berkovic, and that we are just ready to go into the next phase. We are going to have a dedicated website, and we are going to meet much more often. And I am especially interested to hear everything that a lot of you have to say here, because as Tijana said, I think that we can learn, of course, a lot from networks that have existed for a couple of years now. I would like to learn the good things that you did, but I would also like to learn, maybe not so publicly, you can tell them in private, but I would like to learn also about your mistakes, because we could try not to make all of them. I'm sure we will make some of our own, but yeah, it would be really helpful to also know what we should watch out for. So maybe that's enough for a basic introduction. And Tijana, as you are a very important part of the network, you just feel free to jump in.
Moments. Did I freeze now?
Oh, I think Tijana is frozen. Yeah. Okay, she's back.
I can hear you again. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I think we're having hiccups in the Wi-Fi connection. So what I'm interested in is, like, could each of you really briefly give us one thing that you think would not be possible if there wasn't for a network? So what would it be, something that you did, a good thing, that you don't think would have happened otherwise, unless there was a network that you created? Maybe start in the same order from Laura.
Yeah, and related to that, if I have to choose one thing, I perhaps choose the series of investigations that we launched last year, that is called Los Desinformantes, the Disinformers, that are in deep investigation, in some cases cross borders, that try to put the more transparency about who's the groups or the people that is or are systematically creating this information in the region. And that, I think, an initiative or a project that any network of fact checkers can do, not obviously the same, but in a similar way that we did. As Anna said, at least in our experience, it is essential to invest sources and have a coordinator that put the rules in a clear and efficient way to facilitate the process to collaborate. Then I'm gonna put in the chat the former series. Then perhaps if someone is interested on that, after we can continue. And just a small idea or short idea more is that in some of our countries where some of the fact checkers are having problems with the government that are hostigating them, not just virtually, but also in a legal way, have a network and work together. It's important also for the protection of the institution and the persons that are working on the field.
Noko, is that a sentiment that you share as well? Noko, you with us? I think now Noko is frozen. We're having a lot of freezes. Anna, can you take over?
Yeah, it's sort of funny that this panel is having the most problems with their networks. So yeah, I guess it's just the way things happen. Yeah, so the one thing that couldn't be possible is probably understanding context in our specific countries, because it's important to understand that the languages spoken in our countries are pretty much the same. So false information is very easily travels from one country to the other, but it also sort of adapts and localizes. And it's sometimes very important to understand in which way is it exactly doing that, and why do people who live out of or live for creating misinformation, why do they do it that way? So for us, it's really important to talk to people that live and work in each of our specific countries, because it tells us not only more about their situation and about their context, it also tells us something about ours, because it's not like misinformation travels just from Croatia to someplace else. It travels from Croatia to Serbia, from Serbia to Croatia, or from Montenegro to Bosnia, whatever. And for us, it's important to sort of see and learn the patterns, to try to understand the trends, to basically recognize them while they're happening. So I would say that without having a strong network that meets and talks and shares experiences regularly, I don't think we would be able to really truly understand what exactly is going on around us.
And geographically wise, especially compared to some of these other networks, we still don't see a lot of things happening across the border unless we're like communicating actively with each other. That's a really important point. But there was a question at the audience from the audience that is really in this context also interesting. And that is like, how can a network help sustain each of our individual work? It was about fundraising, like how are the networks funded? And maybe Govindraj, you could take this question and give us your view on how this can help and how it does effectively help.
Yeah, and that essentially is the toughest question for the entire global Fact 8 how do you fundraise or how do you raise funding? So if I can, just address the previous point as well, when we started out, and all of us, I mean, who were there in the early days, the challenge, like I said, was to convince people of the need for fact checking. What is fact checking? Why are we doing it? Why is it important? Today, it's actually the reverse problem. A lot of people, including governments particularly, see us as a challenge because the work we do multiplied by our work with platforms is having a serious impact on particularly those who spread organized disinformation, and for which now we have to face the backlash, for which networks become very, very important. And I don't think we've figured out really how to truly work together in a way that we can push back. And this is, I'm sure Laura is ahead than many of us because of the early head start that she's had. And I'm sure we can learn from her. But I think that's going to be a very important challenge for many of us going forward, and therefore underscores the importance of networks. I think the second point is, what is the future of fact checking, and where is it going to go? Are we always going to be reacting the way we are to misinformation that spreads? Can we play a more proactive role? And again, I think organizations like Chequeado have shown the way, and that's important because this is where we can come together in addressing what I call the demand side of the problem. How do you educate people? Can we share curriculum? Can we work with young students or children and educate them about misinformation in a way that they don't even consume it? And we don't have to, put all our efforts in, in a way that will always going to be delayed, and never be as effective as we want to be. So that's one part. On the fundraising, I think most of us came into fact checking 7, 8 years ago, or even 9 years ago, as a mission, as a cause. And as it always happens, we only realize much later that we also have to find ways of making it sustainable. And I think what the one way, the 2 or 3 ways that some of us have found revenue is obviously working with social platforms, but also trying to create more content for training. We are also trying to, for instance, work with people who want to become fact checkers and helping them through the process. And obviously, they see some value in that. So usually, I think it's several revenue sources, of which one could be, let's say, raising funds from institutional donors or philanthropy. But it depends on which part of the world you are in. I think in our part of the world, it's much tougher for philanthropy, and therefore we really have to do something that is relevant and interesting for broad audiences, and therefore earn revenue. Whereas in some other countries, I think philanthropy might work better. But yes, fundraising is very critical, and I think it's more often than not, we are reminded as founders and entrepreneurs about the need to do it and the need to stay focused on it.
Hopefully. So until we get him back, there was a question from the audience. Someone was interested in networking and kind of expanding fact checking. And I would add that it's really interesting to hear that actually having networks has impacted the amplification of the fact checking as such, and kind of added new initiatives, or at least inspired new initiatives to appear, who are doing fact checking. But this question was about indigenous languages, and it's a really interesting one because, for example, when I was thinking about LATAM Chequea, I was always thinking, it's interesting that it's like one language connecting multiple countries and fact checkers, even going beyond the continent, because you also have members from Spain. But you mentioned that there are new initiatives that are specifically oriented towards indigenous languages. So could you give us a bit more detail on that?
Yeah, of course. And just a small fact check, in the region we have Spanish. Most of the countries speak Spanish, but also Brazil, that is a main country that speaks Portuguese. Then we have 2 languages in the region, and LATAM Chequea work in both. Related to what we did with the indigenous project is, I think, one of the things that allowed us to work in a network together. Why? Because as we share a methodology and as some of the content that we are fact-checking in Argentina or Peru or Chile or other countries are more or less the same. In some cases, you know that they are just changing a name or changing the name of a person or a name of a street, but the narrative is the same. If we already have the evidence to fact check that disinformation, we can focus on the better way to make that content be in the place or reach the people that we want in that precise moment. Then what we decided to do this year is the organizations from Peru, Ojo Público, Convoca, Ecuador, Chequeado, from Mexico, Animal Político, and from Bolivia, Verifica, decide to create a specific network to work in 4 different languages, indigenous languages, and what they prepare is podcasts and audios that they share for free, obviously, with the community radios that populations are used to listen. Then they had the chance to do that because part of the content they put on that audios or podcasts had been prepared by other fact checkers from the network. And as I said some minutes ago, together we are faster, together we are more efficient. And then with a small organization, small teams, we have the chance to do things that all alone it wasn't be possible at all.
Thank you, Laura. And again, giving me
if
a great
someone
segue.
From the audience is specific interest on this, please just email me and I'm going to give you all the details.
Thank you, Laura. I think we have Noko back now. Yes, great.
We do. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and Laura was just talking about these podcasts and radio shows, and I know that this is something that you also do, something that is kind of offline and going directly to communities that may not be that like digitally connected. So it would be a good like a segue to continue on and tell us like how are these experiences, and maybe answer the previous question if you can, and that is like, what is this one thing that you feel wouldn't be happening and or you wouldn't be able to accomplish if you didn't have this network that you have?
I mean, the big thing for us is being able to do fact checking at scale, and Africa is a big continent. So for the longest time, Africa Check was the only organization that was doing active fact checking on the continent, and that really can't be a good thing. And so the primary objective of this network of Africa Facts for us is really building up the practice of fact-checking across the continent in the various parts of this continent. So that's the primary goal for us. And where opportunities to collaborate emerge, we really pursue those. And we've had opportunities to work with some of our colleagues from the different organizations in different languages on some projects, including our own Info Finder project, which is our sort of facts repository, if you can call it that, where we sort of showcase and highlight facts, key facts about various important topics on the continent. And so we rely on this network to feed us content from their countries that we are able to publish on our tool, which is accessible to all journalists across the continent for easy referencing of facts and sources. And so those are some of the more important sort of collaborations that we've done. As Africa Check, we do pursue radio, the use of radio to distribute our fact checks a lot, and not just the fact checks, but also the media literary content that we produce, which is really a lot of sort of pre-banking efforts to inoculate the general public against misinformation. One project which we've just launched in Nigeria and are now launching also in Senegal. And this is done in local languages, not English and French, which are our primary publishing languages. We use Pidgin in Nigeria and also Wolof in Senegal. And so these are important projects for us, and where we want or see opportunities to engage the partners in the network to drive forward impact around radio, we will pursue this. But at this stage, it's still really an internal project that we are doing as Africa Check, and we see great potential for it across the network. I think there was another question. There was a two-question situation, right?
Yeah, but maybe we could stick to the first one, because we only have 10 minutes left, and questions have been coming from the audience. So let's try to get them all answered. And before we go to the questions from the audience, I would just like to because we're all a part of a bigger network of IFCN, and it's interesting also to hear maybe really briefly, if and how do you think IFCN as this like global network could be supportive or a fostering environment, or in which way it could help regional networks in connecting, or should it even do that? Because some of these networks, probably maybe even all of these networks, were kind of like organically grown right from the regional need. And it would be interesting to hear, how were they connecting with this global network? Let's put it that way. Anna, maybe you could give us like a really brief view on that for a start.
Well, it's, I don't know. I think it's a really tough question. I think having a network of so many different organizations around the world is sometimes it's hard to learn more about the organizations than just the basic facts. I understand it's really truly different for organizations that have representatives, for example, in the board, or work together differently. But and of course, I have to take into account the pandemic, which is I'm not using it as an excuse, but it did change a lot of things. I think for starters, I think having these kinds of conversations is good enough. I think this is a second year in a row that we are having these sort of conversations about networks, and I feel we are getting closer to the next live global fact, which is hopefully happening in Oslo. And I think I would be happy if IFCN, again found space for us to meet and to sort of work together on something when we are there. Otherwise, I think we have to take into, or at least I take into account that IFCN has a very small team. I would like to see it grow. I would like to see it, more kind of organized to specific needs of the community. But it would be completely unfair to put that on just a couple of people, that are currently there and are doing very, very, very hard work. So I think the support is there. I think if we put in the work, it's going to be even better.
Thank you, Anna. And because we have very little time left, I would like to hear, because there is this interesting question that we also tackled last time that we talked about networks, and that is like how networks could cooperate between each other. There's a lot that you can learn from having a similar experience and situation of networking within your region, or in other countries across one language, etc. So Laura and Noko, you mentioned that you had like an interesting news or something baking in that area that I would like to hear. Whoever wants to take it, who is least frozen at the moment.
Laura can take this one.
Okay.
I think that Noko perhaps is better than me now with the connection, but we are trying to work together and learn from the success and the mistakes of one or the other. Then we prepare a proposal that is waiting for answer to work together, both networks in the field of education for new organization, but also what we found in LATAM Chequea is that it's not necessary enough to have an annual or biannual event for the regional fact checkers. It is much better to have a regular meeting, a monthly meeting, or a newsletter also with the news from one or the other, to allow that one-to-one conversations that are not necessary for the 30 organizations, but in some cases, if you are starting, for example, to work on WhatsApp, you can know who's in the network, launch, I don't know, your account in TikTok, try to know better what is working or not. And then perhaps in the next Global Fact, Noko and I can share with you some good experience from this South-to-South collaboration.
That would be great.
The new that we have today is we at least agree on a proposal trying to help us to work together.
Yeah, and I think networking of networks is probably going to be a topic for the next Global Fact for sure. We have very little time left. I would just like to run briefly through some of the questions that came from the audience. One was about how to communicate efficiently within your network. Please, if possible, under 2 minutes, Noko, could you try to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we primarily use Slack as a way to gather and communicate, largely because it's not bandwidth intensive, and people are able to participate in text type discussions, and these can be reviewed later by people who are not able to participate in the meeting. But we have these meetings regularly, every 2 months, and then we have a newsletter that goes out as well, where different members of the network showcase some of their best work, and we also meet in person once a year. Of course, we haven't been able to do that in the last 2 years due to the pandemic, but we're planning a large gathering next year. Thanks, Tijana.
Sorry. I'm going to be mean and say that we were able to meet each other, our network, this year at the lovely coast of Croatia. And I know that a lot of people were very envious about that, and I totally get why. But that was a really rare occasion and a very useful one for us as a network, next to being to the sea. So we had another question that I think we can tackle from the audience, and that was a question I think directed directly at Govindraj. Do you see the entire fact-checking ecosystem becoming too much dependent on Facebook? Will it be sustainable if that relationship would go away?
Yeah, so I think some of us, or many of us, including in this group here, came into being before Facebook, and then started working with Facebook. So we know the world before Facebook. And obviously, I think working with any platform has its disadvantages. The advantage is that you could use that revenue, if you have any left over, to fund other activities that you want to do. The disadvantage is that a lot of your work gets directed towards the kind of content that is on that platform, which may not be the most important, at least the way you see it. I think the future in some ways is tied to innovation, and that's where our networks can also play a role, and we can align with each other. If I'm interested in technology-led solutions, there would be other fact checkers who are also more aligned to technology, and we could work with them. If I'm interested in more health and medicine, then I could work with others. But I think the future is very simply about saying that how do I be more relevant to our audiences, not just as a fact checker who's reacting to every piece of misinformation, but is really, like, as we think, trying to provide verified information and content or news that is truly dependable upon and truly accurate. And I think that's really the future for most fact checkers. And in that, we will find more self-dependency and not dependency on platforms and so on. I think so. We have to think like that. And that's where the networks will also play a role. How do we come together and think about the future of fact checking? I think the time has come for us to do that. And that's really, to me, a very, very important question at this point.
Yeah, and there's another thing that keeps coming up, and that is like how to be proactive rather than reactive. I think networks can have a great role in that as well, predominantly in doing research across borders and languages, which is something that we already utilized our network for, and I think that we got great results. So we're being told that we're out of time. Thank you all so much. This was really interesting. Could have, go on for at least this much time longer, but we don't have any more. So we're wrapping up now. Thanks everyone for your questions and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.